Let's talk about the team a little bit more, and then I'm going to have some other questions on the others. So your indirect team, the support team.
Which is direct action, man. They're like right there taking care of business.
Yeah, let's talk about the team initially that might receive a tip out in your 1990s restaurant. They'd receive a tip out. So the team that would be those recipients. How did those change?
Well, in the 2000s, right? 2010s, yeah.
I was trying to get far enough ahead.
What we did is we actually just took their earnings, their hourly earnings they had made through, we were all tips on checks, so we knew how much they had made, and we converted them to an hourly. And that was it.
Gotcha.
And then basically said, for some that were way beyond a pay range, said, you're going to be capped here unless you do something else, and we'll happily train you. This is back when we had lunches. We'll get you on a lunch service program. We're going to move you along the career path and not stall you out as a 20-year busser.
So that made it a lot easier for people to see that I need to grow.
100%.
But they had a flat income that they could depend on too.
They still hourly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they knew that if they were clocking in, they're going to get paid, $20 or whatever it was.
But more than a minimum wage was at the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even then, nobody was making minimum wage except the tipped out people.
Right.
Right. Everybody else was way above minimum wage, and so kitchen had been above minimum wage. Dishwashers were above the 15 already when all that passed. So it was a little bit different though, because what it did do is it transitioned them to hourly, that they didn't get their money from the server, they got it from the restaurant. They worked for us. It helped realign and make sure that they were working for the whole team, not just the individual server that was tipping them out. It is kind of a mindset change, and it took a little while.
But you're also providing a very direct career path that if you do great here, and if you're learning from the server, there is a great career to be had here in the next level of what you're doing. So it gives them a focus.
Yep.
Versus I'm not sure how many others create that direct line of growth between their support staff and their serving staff. Some do, but not all.
Yep. And I'll tell you another anecdote or story, not even anecdote, on the support teams was with the front desk before we implemented all this. We had a fairly new person that was working for us. I was asking how it was going, how she liked it, how was the money, and I think at that time she was making $12 an hour. This is in Bellevue. I think it was $12 an hour plus tips. So I'm like, well, how much are the tips? I think she said $6 or $8 an hour extra. And she goes, but I don't count those because I can't count on them. So she makes $20 an hour, but she doesn't think she makes 20 bucks. She makes 12 because she can't count on the tip. And I'm like, and this is how we go recruit, is we're going to give you minimum wage plus tips.
Right.
When I already pay, you earn more. If I just pay them directly, that 20 bucks, I out-compete Nordstrom's.
Yep.
Right? 8 years ago, that was what a Nordstrom's person would have made, was 18. And we're starting that entry-level person we want somebody who's hospitable and friendly, right? We're going after the same client, and I'm fishing with just bait nobody knows about, and they're just dangling shopping discounts and higher wages, and now I could compete. So we win the recruiting game now too.
So from the support staff, they didn't view the tips to begin with like the servers did, even if we thought they did.
No, because the servers have been immersed in this industry. They knew what to count on and what to do. And
right.
But we're talking about new people to the industry.
And they just didn't, yeah.
Right? Like hey, come join us for minimum wage. Like, woo!
How about the back of the house? How did the back of the house change?
Didn't. We never tipped back of the house. We always paid declarative rates. My dad didn't think it was fair that the back of the house had to rely on the front of the house to make up their wages.
Gotcha.
So we never did. We never have. We've always paid them a nice market wage.
So let me talk about a couple of the other reactions, and I want to ask more about some of the mechanics. So I think the people are probably scared to death, one, on servers, which we just went through. And then I think their second reaction is, what are the guests going to say?
Yep.
And how's my guest going to react? Walk us through guest reaction.
Yeah. So Again, we knew that there was going to be a percentage. So I go back to like the Cornell studies on tipping and those, like there's good a percentage that are going to be opposed to whatever you do anyways, right? So there's a noisy few that are going to cause lots of noise. And as ownership, you got to deal with that.
Yeah.
And you got to have a thick enough skin to know when it's just ranting, when it's online trolling of stuff versus real customers that are having issues with that. The fundamental question we wanted to have answered was by our server is if the guest asked, how is this working for you? We wanted them to be able to say something in regards, this is great. Don't worry about me. They've taken very great care. That's what the guest wants to know. Is my server that I've been coming to here for 10 years, are they screwing you? And if you're setting out to screw your servers, they're going to tell them.
You do. They won't say it absolutely at the table.
Right? So that, again, was, the servers are a gold asset for us. It's an incredible, so we wanted to make sure that they felt like, no, we did this with them. We've talked through it. They're in great shape, taken care of. Because that relationship with our guests had to be something that they felt like, okay, you're taken care of. We're good. You're not leaving. We converted, I think, 108 servers and bartenders over and didn't lose a single person when we did it.
So your turnover on servers was 0?
When we did it, yep.
Wow.
Right? And this is messing with compensation. This is the most.
I mean, that's a telling stat right there.
But you can't do that in a week.
That's why you took the 3 months
to discuss.
Yeah.
Right? And then model, test, in real market, and then expand. So when you look at the whole thing, it was probably 8 months before we put everybody over.
So the guest reaction, in your advice, or at least in your experience, is 100% related to how happy the servers are. If the servers are saying, don't worry about it, they're taking care of me, and they're confident.
That you're much better off if it's something like that versus in other circumstances where we saw people change, and we learned from other people, right? It's not like this is done in a vacuum, that other people had switched, they've switched their teams to hourly rates, and they were high hourly rates, but it was a lot less than they made before. Mm-hmm. And so the servers let you know that.
Right.
Like I went into some restaurants and they're like, oh yeah, they totally cut our pay. I'm like, okay, I don't want any of this to happen when we do this. And so that, again, it had to be something that we needed the servers to go, yeah, this is a great program for us.
Really interesting. The advice would be in a cold world, you're going to lose 6% and there's going to be internet trolls. Don't worry about them. Just making the number up for the moment. But for that other 94 and then the ones that will come to you, if the servers are on board and the servers answer consistently and with confidence, this is a great system, I'm being taken care of well. However they use their words, then the guest reaction will follow.
It's much better. There's still people that don't like it. There's still people that travel. I'm like, it is what it is, right? Did we take care of you? Would you felt? And if we totally blew the night, we comp the whole check. Nobody makes anything. But I'm going to go back to this too, because it's one of these funny things where we used to go and look. We get a complaint. First thing you do, pull the reservation, pull the check. Let's see who served, right? What they have. And I started noticing a trend. I'm like, it doesn't matter how bad they said the service was or how bad, they all tip 20%. I'm like, so we have no correlation between tipping and what the service was. There's no correlation, actually. There is in somebody's head, but they still tipped even though they hated the server. Because they felt compelled to, right?
And it drives me crazy, but I see it all the
time.
Surprise me, yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be out and I'd want to tip more or less, and I'd get in arguments with the couples I was with. Well, you can't do that. I'm like,
yeah.
What do you mean? But if it's not getting where we need to go, then why are we doing it?
Yeah. So just like you pay for a bottle of wine, you pay for a steak, you pay for your service.
Right.
So that's where service charge comes in. We happen to settle on 20% because that was about our average tip in the dining room, but that's another equation. That's how you pay for it, right?
In your ideal world, and you hope your average server says to a guest, "There's a service charge. Are you being treated okay?" What would you guess? What would you hope that their answer would be?
Hoping that I make commissions or I'm taken care of. I've got a compensation model. We do have issues with new employees and some other ones where we continually come back to protect this model. Don't beg for tips. Lay it out. You make good money, and you're guaranteed that money if we collect the money on the check, right? And so it's up to the server and the servers around them to make sure that they're protecting that model and delivering for the guest.
I was talking to one operator who played with something. Details were different, and he had a big concern about tourism, and that the regular guests who got used to it and heard a good answer once or twice in the community, in the people who treated the restaurant as part of their community, got there, but he had a high percentage of tourism based folks, and that those arguments just never went away because it was always new to a high percentage.
Yep.
Are you finding that true in your more touristy restaurants?
So what I would say, Anthony, is that 8 years ago, we definitely we led the way, but not the only way on the service charge. And we do have a large high contingency of travelers, business travelers, and others. At the time, because other people did some things around that, there was pushback from some of the tourists. We're no longer in 2016 or whatever, right? We're in a different time period. Service charges are everywhere. I went to Miami, service charges, it's not an unknown thing. Now people may not like it, but it's also not.
It's not
doing it today versus when we did it 8 years ago.
Different.
Yeah. Just because, and it goes back to, we tried that once, it didn't work. It's like, well, maybe you need to try it again. Maybe you did it wrong.
Well, and you're constantly learning and you're listening to your servers, which I think is, because the world keeps changing. What have been some of the biggest pros you didn't see coming? Like you did it because the model had to change, and it had this ancillary benefit. Were there any ancillary benefits you just didn't realize you were going to get here?
Yeah, I mean, first, just not having to worry about the next minimum, like the whole idea of Seattle popping up another $3 an hour.
You can say focus on your business and not be completely...
Whatever, sorry.
Right.
Not worried about that. So in terms of some of the positive elements, I think one was from a support staff recruiting perspective, again, being able to go out there with declarative rates. And if somebody comes in, they're really good, give them a bump, right? Just like on the kitchen, somebody's a producer, you bump them up. You keep that wage where it should be and make sure that we're attracting and recruiting. So I think that whole support staff side, I think, is a good one because we're not recruiting minimum wage plus tips. So in the labor battle that's out there, I win.
Yeah.
Right? All day long.
And so from a recruiting standpoint, it's actually been a benefit, not a harm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Then on the server side, bartender side, same deal. Everybody knows we've got a great compensation deal, so it's not like we're bereft of people to recruit. But I think some of the other benefits that you may not is again that whole perception of, this is no guarantee of any of this, but even just the slight potential discriminations and other things, and sexual harassment. Like, it removes a bunch of that stuff because people aren't trying to perform for a tip and hoping that they'll take care of stuff. They don't have to prejudge a table. Tables don't get to prejudge them. They just take care of business. And there's something that is just being professional about that I think is to me is a great benefit.
And you still want them to come back, and there's still the possibility for a bump. So they're still incentivized for for great customer service.
Yes. Here's something else, and this may be for some of the places with sick leave. There is some cost to this, right? And part of that, and you have to calculate this into everything that you do, because like for paid sick leave, for like the Seattle servers, they get their last payroll earnings.
Oh.
Right? of their commissions and
Yeah.
wages. So, which in a time of COVID and all this other stuff, it's like, hey, when you're sick, and then take the time, right? But guess what? You're not going to miss out on
Right.
your earnings. Whereas in the other thing, people are dragging it. You could see it in other restaurants. All they're getting is their minimum wage if they take sick time.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not good. The other is we opted for a 7I exemption, which is an overtime exemption. And I'm not the attorney, so we'll include some stuff.
That's a whole
but
other thing.
Yeah. For servers that want to work more, especially during the holidays, that they can work overtime and get all of that extra money
They're above
without
that
us having to
threshold.
worry about paying
Oh, that's
overtime on the earnings. And so we had one server who thought originally that I was, we were out to somehow not play fair. And then later I asked her how it was going, and she's like, Chad, I didn't realize how much I could have worked if we didn't have overtime when we now don't in that deal. So she was booking 10 days of work straight, and then she would take a whole week and go to her condo in Hawaii and then come back and work 10 days straight.
Wow.
That was her life. She's like, it's fantastic.
Not a bad life.
Yeah, so because again, we're not trying to force people to work
Right.
that extra, but sometimes you want to work.
Right.
December is one of those months where it's like you can make a lot of extra money.
That's the time.
In the kitchen, they work overtime, they're getting paid, great money. But for the servers, it was like, $20 an hour or whatever. Anyway, so those are some other benefits that pop out of there.
So there had to have been some cons. Obviously, they're outweighed by the pros. But what should someone just brace for a little bit if they look at this route and go this route? What might be a con that they just need to plan for?
Yep. So again, that service. So we combined it with a service charge. So this is how you pay for it. So we chose to pay for it by service charge. And so that's the big one. You can do price increase and service charge and set the service charge to whatever you want. You could be 15%. We knew I coached some clients down in Florida that set their service charge at 12% and gave that as their commissions, and then everything else that was a tip, the servers kept. So there's lots of ways to do this. So the client's reaction was very different than being 20%. So lots of ways to play with how do you pay for it. Could be a combination of service charge, price increases, et cetera. And then the other is that there are, the government does a couple things. So the government in Washington State is going to B&O tax you on service charge.
So be ready for it.
So you lose some money there.
Yep.
You're going to lose FICA tip credit, right? Because you took a whole revenue stream and took it off of tips, and now it's primarily service charge, so that FICA tip credit goes away, which some people don't even understand it, but it's a real cost.
Yeah.
The upside is you've got the revenue that's 100% yours to figure out how you're going to pay everything else. And so again, it's just a revenue stream, just like you're selling a steak or a Chateaubriand or a bottle of wine and you have a revenue stream. Revenue compensation. This is how we pay for it. This is how we pay our teams.
Well, you've been an innovator since the day I met you, so it's natural. So I'm really excited about the model. There are some who are going to watch the video and say, well, yeah, but that's El Gaucho, and their price point and their stuff couldn't possibly apply to something else. Is that a fair statement, or would you encourage them for reasons that you've learned? This will work to more than just someone with your price point?
It will work with almost every price point. You have to deliver, right?
Yeah.
The service charge doesn't need to be 20%. You could set it at a different level. But almost every business we've looked at, talked to, and if you look at your business, what's your average tip? It's at least 20%.
Right.
Right? Like, so the reality is that is the pricing model that's already built into your operation. You could do this where you just raise your menu prices and pay straight up commission and allow a gratuity too.
Yeah.
right? Like there's so many different ways to do it.
You had a buddy from high school who had a more of a family casual price point.
Yep.
You'd still say there's no reason this couldn't work for you.
Some combination of some price increase.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the deal. I would like restaurants to be in business.
Yeah.
Right? And when we set out on this, when I projected us forward, I didn't know how we were going to stay in business. And at the end of the day, I want to be here. I want to be here for our teams and I want to be here for our guests. So there's nobody else coming to save you. You need to do it yourself. And we've clung to a model for 100 years.
It's time to change.
It's time to change. I don't know, you know, and did I ask for the change? No, right? Did we declare a war on hours when minimum wage started to go up? And
We tried.
right? So I don't know. I'd just rather live in a different world
Yeah.
than
I
the
love that.
whining world of, you know, woe is me. It's like, well, this is just business. They changed the regulatory framework and it's not going back. So get on living and get on with your business because everybody's going to have to.
I think that's a great place to probably wrap up the conversation. Anything you think you missed if you were talking to friends or other people who are watching this that we didn't get to cover?
I think the biggest one is don't do it to the team.
Do it with the team.
Do it with them. If you just enact something, it will be a failure.
I
Take
think
your
that's a great way.
time, do it right.
Well, thanks for joining me for a drink today, and thanks
Yeah.
for walking me through your model.
Absolutely.
Everyone else, thanks for joining us today for the conversation. We are going to be providing legal memos and how-tos and more documentation, so don't feel like you have to go back and write everything. Just click on the links and then ask us questions, and we'd love to get back to you. This is part of a 5-part series that the industry is changing, and here's one idea. We'll be bringing you others. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the honor of serving you.